A very warm welcome to Africa. Good morning. It's a beautiful Monday morning and we are so excited to be broadcasting the news making headlines across Africa. My name is Aina Raiza Koyo alongside Glenora Shipura.
Now today is Plant Power Day. Now there's a lot of noise about vegetarianism and veganism these days, and while there's so much good coming out of these movements, it can be tricky fully eliminating certain food groups from your diet. Now a Plant Power Day is the perfect solution for those trying to include more foliage in their meals and move towards a more plant-rich diet, as this day is all about prioritizing plant-based food. Now, me and Aina are gonna have a nice lunch that's a vegetarian meal. So I hope you consider doing something similar. But let's have a look at this video on Plant Power Day.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. Now, in our top stories, Tunisia sentences 16 to death over 2016 attacks. A Tunisian court sentenced 16 people to death in the first judgment against jihadists involved in the 2016 attack near the Libyan border that left scores dead, media reported on Saturday. A total of 96 people stand accused in the trial related to the March 2016 event that saw the town of Ben Guderain become the stage of a bloody battle as members of the Islamic State group's Libya branch staged a series of deadly attacks. The court specialized in terrorism offenses handed 16 of the defendants Tunisia's toughest sentence, and the remaining defendants were handed sentences ranging from 4 years to prison through a small but unspecified number of defendants were acquitted, the reports also said.
Now in our next story, Mali rebel attack leaves dozens of soldiers dead. Now, a rebel attack on an army base in central Mali on Friday has killed at least 27 soldiers and wounded 33 more, the government said. Now, adding that at least 7 soldiers are still missing following the complex attack in the rural commune of Mondoro, which involved car bombs. Now, 70 terrorists were killed in the military's response, the statement said on Friday, without specifying which armed groups was responsible. Now, about 50 soldiers died after an attack on Mondoro and the nearby Bolkesi camp in September 2019. Now, Mali has been facing an armed rebellion since Al-Qaeda-linked fighters seized its desert north in 2012, forcing former colonial power France to intervene to drive them back the following year. Now, the rebel fighters have since regrouped and seized vast swath of the Malian countryside, while also expanding into Niger, Burkina Faso, and other neighboring countries.
Ukraine refugees near 1.5 million as Russian assault continues. The number of refugees fleeing Ukraine was expected to reach 1.5 million on Sunday as Kyiv pressed the West to toughen sanctions and deliver more weapons to repel Russia's attack now past its 11th day. Ukrainian police said there was relentless Russian shelling and air raids in the northeastern Kyiv region, reporting many casualties, while the UN World Health Organization said there had been several attacks on the Ukrainian healthcare facilities. Moscow and Kyiv have traded blame over Saturday's failed ceasefire to allow civilians to flee Mariupol and Volodya, two southern cities besieged by Russian forces. Ukraine said more talks were set for Monday, but Russia was less definitive.
Now, in our next story, Equatorial Guinean authorities say victims of the 2021 Bata explosion compensated. Now, the Equatorial Guinean authorities have compensated 84 families of victims of the explosions of March 7, 2021 in a military camp in Bata that had killed 107 people and injured 615, announced Saturday, the state television. Now, on March 7, 2021, 4 explosions had literally devastated the Nkoa Ntoma camp in Bata, the economic capital, and many neighboring residential areas after a fire caused by poorly controlled burning had set fire to the arsenal and the armory of the military hold. Now, Teodoro Nguema Obiang Mangu, nicknamed Todorin, vice president of the Central African country and son of the head of state, presided over the handover ceremony. Each family received 8 million CFA francs, about 12,000 euros. People who were amputated as a result of the disaster received 4 million CFA francs, about 6,000 euros. Now, the government of the Equatorial Guinea has released 700 million CFA francs, about 1.1 million euros, to compensate the victims, said state television station.
In our next story, pro-Russia protesters rally in Central African Republic. 100 people participated Saturday in Bangui, the capital of Central African Republic, in a demonstration in support of Russia in its offensive against Ukraine, noted a journalist from AFP. The demonstrators gathered at the foot of a statue inaugurated in late 2021 by President Faustin Todera, representing Russian fighters protecting a woman and her children. Many waved Russian and Central African flags in the heart of the capital, near the university. Faced with threatening rebellion more than a year ago, President Todera called on Moscow to rescue his impoverished and poorly trained army, and hundreds of Russian paramilitaries were added to the many others who had been present for 3 years. Now, after the break, we talk about doctors who have been kidnapped in Yemen. Stay with us.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome to another exciting edition.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. We'll now be taking a look at the second half of our news stories. Now, Doctors Without Borders workers kidnapped in Yemen. Now, gunmen in Yemen have kidnapped 2 foreign employees of Medicine Sans Frontiers, Doctors Without Borders, in eastern Hadramaut Governorate, a security source and 2 other legal sources said. Now, the medical charity told Reuters it had lost contact with some of its staff in Yemen and that it could not share more details at this time out of concern for their safety. Another security source said the employees were a German and a Mexican and were taken from their car by gunmen that security forces believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Now, Islamist militant groups are among many destabilizing forces in war-torn Yemen, which is grappling with a humanitarian crisis. Now, in February, 5 United Nations staff, including 4 Yemenis, were abducted in Abiyan Governorate by gunmen also believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. Now, the militant group operates in south and eastern regions of Yemen, which has been divided by a 7-year war between the Saudi-backed government based in the south and the Iran-aligned Houthi movement in the north. Now, Al-Qaeda took advantage of 2011 Arab Spring chaos in Yemen and the ouster of a transitional government from the capital Sana'a by the Houthis in 2014 to create mini-states. but was driven back following the intervention of a Saudi-led coalition in the war against the Houthis.
In our next story, Chinese miner spills deadly cyanide into river, sparking an environmental disaster. A Chinese-owned gold mine near Karoi recently spilled cyanide-laced slimes into Agua River, killing fish and putting the lives of villagers downstream in danger. The river is rich in diverse aquatic life, which includes fish and crocodiles. It supports numerous communities along its course. Last week, there was a panic after reports from the concerned villagers that their lives and the lives of fauna and flora were under threat following the discharge of the cyanide-laden waste into the water body. The incidents happened at D Troop Jiang Risheng mine, where a slime dam wall collapsed, resulting in the discharge of slimes into Agua River, leading to the deaths of many fish.
Now, in our next story, Burkina Faso appoints interim government after January coup. Now, Burkina Faso interim president Paul-Henri Damiba has approved a new government that includes the same defense minister that served under former President Roch Kabore before his ouster in a military coup, an official decree showed on Saturday. Now, Damiba was inaugurated on Wednesday as transitional president for 3 years after leading a group of officers to oust Kabore in January. They said they were motivated by frustration about the mounting violence by Islamist militants. Now, the new government of 25 ministers includes Defense Minister General Patlahemi Simpo, who has retained the position he held under Kabore, according to the decree. Now, the appointment of economist Albert Ouedraogo as the West African nation's transitional prime minister was announced on Thursday. Now, Burkina Faso's military coup was the fourth in West Africa in 18 months, following 2 in Mali and 1 in Guinea, after a period of democracy that had raised hopes the region could shed its reputation as the continent's coup belt.
In our next story, Kenya declares a yellow fever outbreak. Kenya's health ministry has declared an outbreak yellow fever in the country, with 15 patients reported in Isiolo County, resulting into 3 deaths so far. In a statement issued by the Director General of Health, Dr. Patrick Amoth, on the 3rd of March, the authorities says the first case was detected on the 12th of January. To date, 15 patients representing with the fever, jaundice, muscles pain, and joint pain have been line listed, the youngest of them being 11, whereas the oldest is 65. While the majority of young adults, males, are the most affected, reads the circular. It adds, there is therefore raised the alert in all of the 47 countries in Kenya, more so with the high-risk countries being Wajir, Garissa, Marsabit, Meru, Samburu, Baringo, Elegio, Marakwet, West Pokot, and Tekuna.
Now, in our next story, a decline in coronavirus cases worldwide. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has continued its strong decline in the world this week, with contaminations decelerating everywhere except in Asia and Oceania. Now, here are the most important weekly developments taken from an AFP database. Now, as an important indicator, the number of diagnosed cases only reflects a fraction of the real number of contaminations, and comparisons between countries should be taken with caution as testing policies differ greatly from one country to another. Now, for country statistics, the analysis is limited to countries with a population of at least 500,000 and an incident rate of more than 50 weekly cases per 100,000 population. Now, with 1.47 million infections recorded each day worldwide, the indicator is clearly decreasing for the 5th consecutive week, according to an AFP report as of Thursday.
All right. Those have been our first batch of stories. After the break, we discuss a Yes to Choice march that is set to take place in Windhoek on the 19th of March. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Now, the Voices for Choice and Rights Coalition are hosting a reproductive rights march in Windhoek on the 19th March. Now, the Yes for Choice march comes ahead of an expected parliamentary committee report in the issue of whether or not to legalize abortion in Namibia. Namibia is one of several Southern African countries where abortion is illegal unless in cases of rape and incest, or if a pregnancy poses danger to a woman's life. Nayana Marie Smith compiled this report. Let's have a look.
Reproductive justice now! Reproductive justice now! Reproductive justice now!
500 women die yearly in Namibia as a result of backdoor, unsafe, illegal abortions. So the Yes to Choice March is taking place on the 19th of March 2022 at 9 o'clock. We are starting at the Katutura State Hospital all the way to UN Plaza. I think the purpose of this is really that there is no other better moment, an urgent moment than now, when we are expecting for Parliament to submit a report after they had conducted and convened on the abortion public hearings. And I suppose that this is also one of our other advocacy avenues that we are using to revive once again constituencies, to inform people that, you know, the law still needs to be repealed. And as the pro-choice movement, we are still very much continuing with that advocacy. We will have a full-on program of speakers from various movements and organizations in which they will talk about reflections from the past 2 years, but also linking in 32 years into independence. As we do know, after that weekend, we are celebrating Namibia's 32 years of independence. So it's really dovetailing and linking women's independence versus our own country's independence, and how so many people still very much would be left behind just because of archaic laws, obsolete laws that continue to affect and infringe on their reproductive rights and agency otherwise.
How far would you say we've come over the past year in terms of the, at times, very heated still debate on reproductive justice?
I think we've come quite far since especially the petition was launched in 2020 to reform the abortion law, which by that time had received 60,000 signatures, and right now we are still looking close to 70,000 signatures. And I suppose that really bringing more light to why the specific law is so draconian and the way that it already is archaic is that so many people have started understanding why the law must be repealed. And I suppose it's also through some of the influences from various pro-choice movements and organizations and individuals that have also gone to the public hearings that have been conducted in the different regions across the country to really speak for the abortion law to be repealed. And definitely that there have been also intersectional groups, LGBTQ plus groups that have also gone and had a very strong pro-choice pronouncement at these specific hearings. So we've come very far in finding ways to close specific information gaps, but there's still a long way to go because legislation, bill, all those many other steps must still be followed and must still be institutionalized to really fully and meaningfully realize the reproductive rights and healthcare of women and non-conforming people.
Does this law in any way protect women?
Not at all, because when the law was put together in the 1970s, this is an inherited apartheid archaic law. It was inherited from the then South African administration, which was under apartheid regime 47 years ago. It was actually meant to restrict the reproductive agency of especially white women, especially because it was what they wanted to see as a white utopian South Africa. And so they restricted the options of white women to preserve white legacy and not to preserve the lives of all women of color, of different race and ethnic groups. So coming back into Namibia, and especially as rightly as you point out, those that have more economic agency will be able to travel outside of Namibia to obtain this very vital essential service. And even to add that 500 women die yearly in Namibia as a result of backdoor, unsafe, illegal abortions. And so it very much forces women to procure abortions in very unsafe, unsanitary circumstances and conditions. And so it just exacerbates once again, health conditions. It strains our health system, it strains our economy, and definitely also affects the socio-economic development of women and communities in very, very far severe ways. So you only have 4 conditions. One is if it's a threat to your life, it's a threat to your mental health, and if it was conceived through rape or incest, or if it's a serious risk to fetal impairment. Those are the only 4 conditions, and outside of that, it's criminalized. So you can go to jail of about 5 years or 5,000 fine or fees that you have to pay. The other is also when we're looking at the specific steps to obtain the law under these 4 conditions. The steps themselves are so cumbersome. It's almost that it refuels the narrative that this is definitely state-determined law and act for procreation, which imposes its own vision of a woman's role to procreate in society. And that already infringes on their reproductive agency and autonomy. And so by alleviating especially those cumbersome steps, then we know that women will have more choices, more options, and more agency, especially to obtain this very, very vital and essential health service.
Okay, now for anyone who wants to come join the protest in 2 weeks' time on the 19th of March.
So the Yes to Choice protest is inviting the public to join us at the Katutura State Hospital. We encourage everyone to wear green because this is also the color that's been used across the globe of various conservative nations that have also decriminalized in their countries, as we've seen recently with Colombia. And this is really just to signify that this is about reproductive justice, for the right for someone to parent, not to parent, and to make choices about their futures that affects their options. And so the greenness is really to signify growth, to signify options, and to signify those options and choices that they must have, that is their right and their prerogative.
Choose your flex package with Paratus today. Sign up for ultra-fast fiber with the convenience of mobile LTE. That's 2 products in 1 bundle. It's new, it's 1 bill, and you can stay connected in more than 1 location.
For more information, visit paratus.africa/NA.
Always prepared. Paratus.
This story and more. Good morning, Master Mike. Please tell us about this.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning. Yes, indeed. Like I said, that the Minister of Health last week said that close to 90 people died, committed suicide last year. The issue has come about because this year, almost every week, the country records a case of suicide case. We have a situation where there are about, I can give 2 examples where a man in his 60s committed suicide because he said that his children were not taking care of him. Then a month ago, a woman attempted to commit suicide, and she also gave a poisonous chemical to a 2-year-old son who died, but apparently she did not die. So these cases have been almost on a weekly basis, and the Minister of Health has expressed concern that this situation, if not contained, would actually be disastrous. They have attributed the issues of committing suicide to relationship breakup, financial challenges, unemployment, and stigma. So this is the state of affairs in Zambia, and now the Minister of Health is saying whoever comes to the clinic must be checked for mental illness.
Now, in your next story, Zambia's First Lady, Muthinda Hichilema, has called for an end to gender discrimination as the country commemorates International Women's Day. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, as the country commemorates Women's Day tomorrow on the 18th of March 2022, the First Lady, Mrs. Hakainde Hichilema, has spoken against gender discrimination. That's her in the pictures where she was officiating at one of the events to celebrate Women's Day ahead of the Women's Day celebration. So she's saying gender discrimination is one of the things that is contributing to gender inequality, as well as cases of gender-based violence, which must not be tolerated. So according to this year's theme of this year's Women's Day theme, Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. She says gender discrimination in all sectors should be fought, and women should be in the forefront in terms of governing themselves, as well as taking care of their households and also contributing to national development. So this is something that she's spoken highly against, and a number of civil society organizations advocating for gender equality have spoken through her to say, let the government of President appoint more women in key government decisions so that women can have a voice at the higher table in terms of decision making for the country.
All right, now moving right along, over 100,000 children ages from 12 and 17 across Zambia have received a COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes, the decision was taken by the Ministry of Health to increase the rate of COVID vaccination. So the Ministry of Health took a decision to say children from 12 to 17 must be vaccinated. However, there has been some hurdles where, because the procedure is that a child who must be vaccinated against COVID must get, the parents or guardians must sign a consent letter. But in some cases, some parents and guardians have not been able to sign these consent letters to enable health authorities to vaccinate their children when they go to school. But there has been some good news, like we have indicated that over 100,000 children have been vaccinated against COVID. And it is something that the Ministry of Health has said is on a positive note, though not according to their expectations, because the expectations of the Ministry of Health is to vaccinate close to 70% of the total population, which so far has not reached half of the target, because there's still some myths, as well as some just people do not want, and also people have dropped the guard against COVID, because at present, as I speak to you, the positivity rate in Zambia is about 4%. So meaning there is some form of people. There's not much COVID that is being transmitted because maybe people the variant is not that too strong, or it is producing mild symptoms. However, this is something that is positive coming out in the era of COVID against vaccinating children against COVID in Zambia.
Okay, all right. Now, Equasi Government Department has zero-rated customs duty on the importation of equipment and machinery to support the growth of the local pharmaceutical industry in the country. Can you tell us more?
Yes, Zambia is the net importer of pharmaceutical products from India. And as a result of this, the Zambia Development Agency has called on Indian investors to create a joint ventures with their Zambian counterparts to promote the development of pharmaceutical industry in the country. So the idea is that most of these big companies in India that are involved in pharmaceutical products have been encouraged by the Zambia Development Agency. The Zambia Development Agency is the quasi government department that promotes foreign direct investment. So it is one of the procedures that they are asking to say, if Zambia is a net importer of pharmaceutical products from India, why don't we allow these Indian companies to partner in Zambian companies so that we begin to produce these pharmaceutical products locally here, which, according to the agency, is going to reduce the amount of forex that Zambia uses to import, as well as when these pharmaceutical industries are set up here in Zambia, they are going to create employment. So it is something that also the Indian High Commissioner to Zambia, Ashok Kumar, has spoken of, and is hoping that he's going to use his influence to entice some Indian companies to establish their industry here in Zambia. There has been some more, but they want more to be done in order to increase the number of pharmaceutical products that will be manufactured locally.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. Now, up next, we'll be taking a look at what we have learned about the symptoms of long COVID or post-COVID condition so far. But first, we'll have a look at the weather.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. What have we learned about the symptoms of long COVID and post-COVID conditions so far? How long does it last and when should you worry? And what treatments are recommended? To answer all these questions is World Health Organization Dr. Janet Diaz, who explains everything in Science in 5.
We are talking about long COVID or post-COVID-19 condition today. Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith. We are talking to Dr. Janet Diaz today. Welcome, Janet. Let's start, Janet, with what we have learned so far in the third year of the pandemic about the symptoms of post-COVID-19 condition.
Thank you, Vismita, and we've learned quite a bit. I think if you reference our most recent publication on the definition of post-COVID-19 condition, we highlight 3 symptoms there that are common. One is fatigue. The second is shortness of breath or trouble breathing. And this is an important one for those of you that potentially may have been very active before. So think about your breathing. Are you more limited? Let's say you used to run 1 mile. Is it now that you don't feel you're able to run as long because you're feeling shortness of breath? So we have to look at what your functional status was before and how you elicit if you're feeling trouble breathing. And the third is cognitive dysfunction. That is a fancy term of what is commonly referred to as brain fog. And what does that mean? That means people are having trouble with their attention, having trouble with concentration, having trouble with recall or memory, trouble sleeping, trouble with executive functioning. So that's actually the types of symptoms people have been describing. But this is just 3. There are actually over 200 symptoms described in the literature from patients who have had or have post-COVID-19 condition.
Janet, speak to us a little more about the cardiovascular symptoms.
Sure. So the cardiovascular symptoms, again, so cardiovascular symptoms can present in different ways. They can present as shortness of breath. So I've already described the shortness of breath. They can present as heart palpitations. Your heart is racing, or what we call arrhythmias. And other cardiac symptoms can present as myocardial infarctions. Now, there has been a recent report that was looking at patients who had COVID-19, and it followed them up a year after. And this report was coming out of a cohort in the United States, and they found increased risk of cardiovascular complications in that cohort. And those complications are described as having had stroke, acute myocardial infarction, which means heart attack, or other causes of thrombosis or blood clots, and including death. So they did report increased risk of death in that 1 year after the acute COVID-19.
Janet, when should people start worrying that they may have long COVID?
In our case definition, we say people should start worrying about 3 months after their acute COVID-19 illness. That gives some people to recover from the acute infection, even if they've had mild disease or more severe disease. After 3 months, that's when we say, if you have one of these symptoms, then be concerned that you could have post-COVID-19 condition and get evaluated. So another common question is, how long does it last? In our case definition, which I keep referencing, we say at least 2 months. So perhaps you may have a symptom that you're concerned is long COVID, but if it goes away after a week or a couple of weeks or a month, then we don't consider it to be long COVID. Now, if it lasts more than 2 months, then we start to say, okay, we're concerned that this is long COVID, post-COVID-19 condition. At that point, patients may experience symptoms for longer than that. They may experience up to 6 months, and there's reports of people experiencing protracted symptoms for up to a year or for more than a year.
Speak to us, Janet, about the treatments that we are recommending at this time.
Because I've described the condition as being different types of symptoms that affect multiple systems of the body, then the treatment is not one treatment for all patients. The treatment has to be patient-centered and focused on the symptoms the patient is presenting with. Now, we don't have any drugs for the treatment of post-COVID-19 condition, but we do have interventions such as rehab interventions or self-management techniques in order to help people improve their quality of life while they still have these symptoms that have not yet fully recovered. For example, one of these self-management techniques could be that if you have fatigue, then don't overexert yourself when you are feeling fatigued. Try to do your activities when you're at times in the day when you're not feeling fatigued. If you have cognitive dysfunction, as I described before, don't multitask and have too many screens up at the same time or try to do too many things. Try to focus on the one activity that you're working on. If you have insomnia, trouble sleeping, then as well work on sleep hygiene techniques and interventions. So there are a series of these types of interventions that can be done, as well as rehab interventions. Now, we do recommend that the care of patients with post-COVID-19 condition be done in a coordinated, integrated way. We do think at the center of that care model should be someone who knows you, your primary care physician, a general practice clinician that knows you. Then they can reach out to the different specialists in an integrated way, in a coordinated way, in case you need evaluation by a specialist. That can include a neurologist or a cardiologist or a pulmonologist or a mental health specialist or a rehab specialist or someone to help with social work or social or peer-to-peer support groups. So together, this type of care model we think is most optimal for patients who are living with post-COVID-19 condition.
Thank you, Janet. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Now we're going to be taking a look at our economic news stories. Now, African airlines struggle to recover in the near term. African airlines face a difficult comeback as projections point to a slow recovery in international traffic. Now, passenger traffic is projected to remain low, subdued in the near term, compounded by the slow progress in vaccination against COVID-19 and the overall impact of the crisis on developing countries. Now, the International Air Transport Association now predicts that passenger numbers within the continent will recover over a shallow gradient, achieving 76% of 2019 levels this year, 85% next year, and 93% in 2024, before surging to 101% in 2025, a year later than the global industry average. Now, IATA is now asking governments to lift all barriers to travel, including quarantine and testing for passengers that are fully vaccinated, and to replace PCR tests with pre-departure antigen testing for non-vaccinated travelers to ease movement.
In our next story, Visa and MasterCard suspend operation in Russia over Ukraine invasion. U.S. payment firms Visa Inc. and MasterCard Inc. on Saturday said they were suspending operations in Russia over the invasion of Ukraine, and that they would work with clients and partners to cease all transactions there. Within days, all transactions initiated with Visa cards issued in Russia will no longer work outside of the country, and any Visa cards issued outside of Russia will no longer work within the country, the company said. We were compelled to act following Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine and the unexpected event that we have witnessed, the chief executive of Visa said in a statement. Now, the U.S. President Joe Biden, in a call with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, welcomed Visa and MasterCard's decision to suspend the operations in Russia, the White House said.
Now, in our next story, a devastated Delta oil community begins protest. Now, the people of Iraqi and oil and gas producing community in Delta State have threatened massive protests over what they deemed long years of neglect by oil companies operating in the locality. Now, they said that they have run out of patience and appeal to the federal and state governments to come to the aid of the people and rescue them from health, economic, and social challenges due to environmental degradation, including pollution of water bodies and farmlands resulting from oil exploitation. Now, the Iraqi people stated that these at one-day community diagnostic dialogue held in the community hall at the weekend, organized by Health of Mother Earth Foundation, a non-governmental organization which vowed to partner negatively impacted communities to address environment injustice.
Malawi Stock Exchange picks up in February. The Malawi Stock Exchange showed signs of recovery from the devastating impact of COVID-19 pandemic in February, when it registered a month-on-month return on index of 2.18%. This was reflected in the upward movement of the Malawi All Share Index, the measure of local shares market performance, to 45,472.9 points from 44,501.63 points registered in January 2022. The 16 counter bourse started the year slowly as it posted a marginal downward movement for the MASI in January to 44,501.63 points from 45,367.68 points in December 2021. Now, speaking of stock exchange, here are your economic indicators.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Now for our sports news, we're heading over to Cape Town, South Africa, speaking to Ari Hougaard. Ari, good morning.
Yes, very good morning. It was a nice and busy sporting weekend. Hopefully your team did well over the weekend.
Okay, to start us off with some cricket, the ICC Women's 50 Over World Cup is taking place in New Zealand. Can you tell us more?
Yes, it's a big tournament. It's the ICC 50 Over Women's World Cup being played in New Zealand. And the news from the tournament at the moment is that that's firstly West Indies that surprised New Zealand in the first game of the tournament, and they beat them by 3 runs. New Zealand coming back playing at the moment. They're playing Bangladesh. They just need 20 more runs to win their second game of tournament. They're chasing 140 or 120 for the loss of 1 wicket. So it seems like New Zealand will be back to winning ways again. Earlier, India beat Pakistan by 107 runs, and then also South Africa had a winning start beating Bangladesh over the weekend, and Australia, they were too strong for England. So that is some of the World Cup news from New Zealand. That's continuing. That's all the captains playing for that trophy. There will be lots of cricket over the next few weeks in that tournament. Also, Namibia cricket team, the men's team, they were in action against Oman, so it was a great win for them. That was in the League Two game that was played. Namibia started off badly. They were 53 for the loss of 7, but then made 226 runs. Gerard Erasmus made 100, 120, and they beat Oman by 110 runs. On to some football news. Yes?
Do please do continue. Finish your thought.
Apologies for that. Yes, it's maybe you were going to ask me what happened in the big football game, and that was yesterday. That was Manchester United that played Manchester City. That was a massive derby game that was played in the UK, in England, and it was Manchester City that beat Manchester United by 4 goals to 1. That maybe just underlined how Manchester City is now the better team in the league. Manchester City fell back quite a bit. So at the moment, Manchester City leading the league, 28 games, 69 points. Liverpool, they're still in touch. They beat West Ham by 1 goal to 0. They're 6 points behind, and with 1 game in hand. And then Arsenal, they're making good strides. They're up in 4th now. They beat Watford by 3-2, and they're up in the top 4 at the moment. On to some motor racing news. It was the Qatar GP, the motorcycle Grand Prix, the first one of the year that started, and that was yesterday in Qatar. And the good news for Southern African interest, and it was Brad Binder that came in second, but the winner is Italy's Ennio Bastianini. He's from the Cresini team, and the great story for him, his first win ever. Brad Binder there in the Red Bull in his KTM was in second place, a brilliant second place for him, and Paul Esperanza of Honda was third. The world champion, the previous 2021 world champion, Fabio Quattrorini, was in 9th. On to some golf news. It was the Bay Hill Invitational that was played in the USA on the PGA Tour. It was the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It was a difficult tournament in terms of scoring, but first let's go there to the Kenyan Open. The Kenyan Open that was played, Men's Open in Nairobi. The winner there, Ashwin Wu from China on 16 under par. Second place, Aaron Cockrell of Scotland, and then Tristan Lawrence of South Africa also on -12, tied in second place. And then on the USA Tour, that is the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It was low scoring, it was tough conditions. It was Scotty Scheffler of the USA that came out winner, -5, his 4-round total. And his second place, one shot back, was still Adam Victor Houghton and Billy Horshaw back in that tournament. And now to finish off some tennis news quickly, it was Lyon women's final tennis tournament that was played over the weekend. Great story there, encouraging story there for Diana Yastramenko of the Ukraine. And that is the Lyon tennis. Firstly, it was Chang Shuhua from China that won the tournament. But Diana Yastramenko from Ukraine, she played in the final. There she is. She lost in the final, unfortunately, in 3 sets. But a week ago, she was still hiding for 2 days in a car park in Ukraine. And she fled Ukraine with a 15-year-old sister. Amazing story. She played in the final yesterday in Lyon in France, but lost in the final. So encouraging story for her to overcome all of that. That's the sporting news we have for today. Hope you have a brilliant Monday, and we talk again for in a week. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Ari, for giving us that sports package. And yes, a happy Monday to you too as well. All right, that has been Ari disseminating information about your favorite sports. And we'll be right back after this short commercial break with your highlights, just in case you missed us. Happy Monday, and thank you very, very much for staying with us throughout our entire show. Now, if you have missed some of the headlines, here are they. Tunisia sentences 16 to death over 2016 attacks. Ukrainian refugees near 1.5 million as Russian assault continues. Equatorial Guinean authorities says the victims of the 2021 Bata explosion are compensated. Pro-Russia protesters rally in Central African Republic. Doctors Without Borders workers kidnapped in Yemen. African airlines struggle to recover in the near term. Those have been our stories.
And with that, we've reached the end of our show. Now remember that Africa Good Morning is repeated on our DSTV channel 285 and on the One Up 2 website between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. Now if you have any comments regarding our show, do please share them with us on our Twitter and Facebook pages. And if you happen to have videos or photos of happenings in your parts of Africa, to share them with us, and we'll gladly include them in a segment in our show. From me, I'm Glenn Rashipura, and she is Aina Raisa Koyo.
It's all our love, all our light. God bless.